Episode 112, Fine-Tuning Your Bullshit Filter.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Another Tuesday and another episode of the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. As for yesterday's episode, 111, have you become sensationally successful at your job yet? If not, stay tuned. Another exciting announcement. I'm currently uploading all of the existing episodes to YouTube. So if you are one of those people who don't really enjoy the podcast format through Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts or Deezer or whatever is your favorite or least favorite platform, you can now subscribe to the very best podcast in the world on YouTube, and I will try to upload the videos in a timely fashion so that they'll be available simultaneously-ish on that platform as well. Now, that being said, let's get to today's episode, which is fine-tuning your bullshit filter. And the message, the title, not the message, but the title is rather cryptic. And I have to take 3 to about 2 dozen steps back to explain what this episode is going to be about, right? So we all have been confronted with a situation when good friends try to give good advice. Right. And that's, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So nobody is going to be ill-willed in giving you advice. Problem is that even though they are our friends, they may have a totally different worldview. They may have a totally different walk of life. They may have a totally different set of experiences. And there are a multitude of other factors which make them different and which make every one of us humans unique, which is good. However, these differentiations in personality, experience, development, education, etc., inevitably lead to advice that people give you, which may not at all be applicable to your lifestyle, to your anticipated future, and so on and so forth. So common sense would say to block this advice out generally. Not even reflect upon it, just categorically rule it out. If it's a good friend, you're not going to tell them to shut the fuck up and leave you alone. You've got your own plans, etc. Right? And what we have to, because advice may be criticism. So let's differentiate between justified criticism and unjustified criticism, right? Because, somebody walks up to you and says, hey, a friend comes up to you and says, hey, I would lead my life differently. My opinion is that you are doing this and that and the other wrong because I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. My experience was this, yada, yada, yada. So that usually leads to confrontation. And in your head, you will be going, shut the fuck up. Right? But don't argue against it. After all, it's a friend, right? They mean well, and they don't necessarily know you well enough to transfer their life experience over to you, and that this transfer just cannot happen because it just cannot compute, because your life is totally different and your life plans, right? So it's really about accepting this criticism or advice, or call it whatever you want. Reflect upon it, because even though currently it may be unvaluable to you, it may become invaluable in the future. Let me give you an example. When I left the insurance career I had in finance, I went self-employed and started my own company. The rest is pretty much history. Started my second, started my third, and then went into consulting, and everything was good and fine. And along the way came, this was when I started my first web design company. I was at a conference giving a speech, and after the speech, a guy walks up to me. I think he was with the Belgian police, and he said, "You're so good at explaining things. Why don't you go into consulting?" And that's a point where I said, no. I've got people on the payroll. I've got responsibilities towards these people. So I'm not going to dump them in favor of going into consulting, right? That was the first thought that I had. And, for a guy that is on a payroll, that should have been something to consider. But he didn't. And anyhow, long story short, I made the decision to actually do that quite a few months later, because even though the advice in the beginning was kind of stupid and didn't really compute on my end, it was, after all, the right decision to make. I was able to manage the company. I hired some people to take care of the projects that I would usually do. And that gave me tons of free time, and boom, there you go. I had pretty much a lot of time available to dig in deeper into the matters that I was dealing with, to then be able to proactively consult and sell my hours much more expensive than I was managing projects. That being said, this is really about, taking advice, reflecting on it, putting it in a drawer, the, reflected upon information, right? Not the raw information, but, you've reflected upon it. Is it applicable to my life now? Will it change my life? And how will it change my life if I act upon it? Does it compute at all? Does it fit into my life, etc.? Right? And you take this computed advice, put it in a drawer if it's not applicable right now. And then when you come back to a new life's situation, you kind of, open up the drawer and say, damn, there was something there, a good talk that I had with a friend or an acquaintance. So you take out the information and then you act upon it because it's been processed. You've kind of gone through the do's and don'ts, the consequences. Are they positive or negative? What is the impact? If negative, if positive, etc. You've kind of, done your due diligence on the advice that you got, right? So this goes to say, don't categorically ignore, any piece of advice or criticism. Reflect upon it, because, even though it may not be justified right now or, applicable right now, it may be in the future. So, in some heated conversation, some things are said which, aren't necessarily meant that way. So, be aware of this. And if you get advice or criticism, don't act upon it by really shutting someone down or categorically ignoring it, because it may become valuable, perhaps even invaluable in the future. And that's what friendships are really about, and talks with good acquaintances. So in that sense, if you know someone that needs to fine-tune their bullshit filter, that is quite emotional upon, receiving feedback, whichever way, shape, or form that may be, share this episode with them. If you haven't, shame on you, but now is your chance to repent. Subscribe to the very best podcast in the world on your favorite platform. We got Apple and we got Spotify and we got all of them. And now we have YouTube. So there's no fucking excuse not to be subscribed to the very best podcast in the world. In that sense, have a successful day. If you've already had your successful day, have a good night. Leave your hands above the blanket, and we'll be back tomorrow when we're going to talk about 4 ways to restore broken character in leadership. Peace out, take care, and we'll be in touch tomorrow. See you soon, folks.